Hi, and thank you for stopping by to check out our 1986 Land Rover Santana. My name's Theodore, and I work with Auto Brokers Collection with Rigo Vega, and it's an honor to be here with something that is a piece of our one of our best clients' family history. So in this scenario, this truck was originally built in Spain and spent most of its life in Colombia until 9 years ago when it was imported by our client's family, and he had intention of registering and using the vehicle here and restoring it. Unfortunately, some time ago he did pass away, preventing the family from deciding to move forward, and it took us some time of working with the state in order to acquire the registration and title work for this vehicle so that it could be registered here, which we were able to accomplish that recently, which is fantastic. So once we accomplished that, we assessed what the vehicle was going to need to give the next owner a fantastic platform to build what their vision is, right? Because that's the beautiful thing about these trucks is there's just so much that you can do with them. You can go with a full factory restoration, or you can do something one-off that's really going to represent what your passion is. So this unit, after some assessment front to back, we decided that some very key things were going to be taken care of. Number one, we wanted it to be more presentable and more eye-catching. So we did work through the paintwork of the vehicle. So you'll notice that the paint that's currently visible is going to have a lot fresher style. And while we were able to do that, we still hung on to a lot of the factory stickers that were with the vehicle for an unknown number of years. So as you look up and down the truck, you're going to notice that the original stickers that were on the truck in Colombia are still there. But we took the time to freshen up the body as well, which I think is going to be awesome for the next owner. You'll see that we have the factory spare, which is mounted on the hood where it's supposed to be with that original style tire. But that's not what was provided to us with the truck, right? These wheels do fit appropriately, and they do have the correct choice of offset, which is fantastic. So when we drove the unit originally, we were only able to achieve about 40 miles an hour. The tire choice was so small at the time. So we worked with different sizes and decided on this destination Firestone tire that, believe it or not, between a little bit of maintenance and getting the motor where it needed to be and the tire choice, we achieved 62 miles per hour on GPS, which I think is a fantastic speed for the truck. And really lets you actually get to wherever it is you want to go play with it out of the city. So that should be a ton of fun for you. So you've got a brand new set of tires recently installed and a new set of lug nuts as well. Well, we made sure the four-wheel drive system was operating correctly, which is going to be great for you to play with. Let's talk about some of the original parts of the vehicle we want you to be aware of. Number one, this is not a perfect truck. It's not a restoration. It's a driver. It was driven its entire life in Colombia, and hopefully the next owner will continue to drive it here and use it the way it was intended to. So with that in mind, this truck does have some rust. It does have imperfections. It is very mechanical, it's very agricultural, and it's going to show a lot of things that we just put them back to a place where they're safe, functional, and good to use, and you can take it as far as you like from there. The doors we realigned as best as we were able to, so that you could have a nice functionality out of that opening latch and shut, where you don't feel like you're having to slam the door of your grandpa's 70s pickup truck that's been on the farm unattended for so many years, which is fantastic. Both of the mirrors are still in place, which is incredible. And we were able to actually go ahead and make the decision we were going to keep the rack, which is fantastic. So the paint on the rack is not perfect. That can be one of the projects you guys decide to take on. And it's actually a removable rack. They use a clamp system. The ladder on the back is only one bolt. So taking that off, restoring it, that'll be a fun project for you guys. So now we're able to work our way towards the back of the vehicle. As we come back, this is a four-door model. So the four doors are meaning you're gonna have a driver and a passenger rear. You're gonna have your rear entry door, and on the passenger side, you're just gonna have a front passenger door. You're gonna have the larger glass on both the rear and then a small narrow window on this side. And later on, we'll show you the difference on that passenger side of the truck. So now if you'll join me back here at the stern of the vehicle, right? I've got some fantastic things here that we can showcase that, again, our goal was to build a nice starting point for the next clients to have as they moved forward into building what their vision was. So this fiberglass cap that they opted for this model had some unusual lights that were installed previously. So we went ahead and serviced the lights with some nicer new LED options, which is going to be the case for every light on the truck except for your gauge cluster, headlights, and your tag lights, just because of the design of these. So all of the lighting on the truck currently has been rewired, and it's all brand new components, which is fantastic. So you're going to have running lights up high, running lights mid, and brake and turn signals low. This is going to be all LEDs, as I mentioned, and they're very serviceable lights. At the back of the truck, you do have your access ladder. It is a single bolt setup. You undo the one bolt, the ladder does come right off. And the same thing, we made sure that the latches for the rear of the doors were just nice to operate, which is very important to us. Fuel jug and your license plate bracket's going to be up high. This bumper configuration is pretty unique. It does have the shackle. You're going to have access to the drop pin style hitch configurations. And it does have a receiver for a trailer hitch wiring harness if you chose to assemble it. I did not rewire that. I left it out. The way that we wired the truck, though, would make it very easy for you to add those things back in later. So that's not a very large project whatsoever. It does still retain the antenna configuration. Again, this is not wired to anything currently. It could be serviced and replaced depending on what the next owner's needs may entail. So, but it is still present, which is pretty awesome. We're going to work over here to the passenger side of the vehicle. Now I'm going to be able to really show you that four-door design, which is awesome. So you get the two large pane glasses, and it's a lot of visibility. You really don't have blind spots with this truck, which is pretty cool given what it is in traffic. Again, we retained the stickers as best that we could from its past lives, and I think that does attract a lot of attention. Fueling system on this truck is very straightforward, right? It is a gas motor, so you're just going to have a standard lockable access fill point here. Now, a little bit about that fuel system. It uses a Weber carburetor, which is awesome. There is an electric fuel pump that feeds it currently. The fuel level sender does come to life when you cycle the ignition on, but even before we rewired the unit, we were having some issues with that fuel level sender actually providing accurate information. So at this time, I can't guarantee that the fuel level sender is working appropriately. That should be a very easy project for the next person. It's just not something that we were going to have the adequate amount of time to tackle this time around. So again, I just want to show you that last door one more time. They all do open and close in a very nice manner. We'll have this opportunity too to show you when we go in the engine bay later that it uses an oil bath filter currently, but the snorkel is present as well. So you could configure that back later on if you decided to. Both the driver's side and the passenger side mirrors are present. And now I'm looking forward to working around towards the front of the vehicle again, because as we come towards the front, there's a few extra features here that are pretty important. And I think that they are a big staple for what Land Rover kind of sits in the head of a lot of people's memories. So you do have the functional hood tire carrier, right? And everything's there to make that appropriate and work correctly, which is fantastic. You do have the classic 4-screw grill, which lets you get behind everything very easily. It's very, very pleasant to work on. I gotta say, to wire and to add accessories, it is just very nice to have something so easy. You are gonna still have, as I mentioned, your high and low beam halogen bulbs. I retained those. I cleaned up all the wiring for those so that you had a nice serviceable unit. And then just like our theme in the back, we went with the LED standard circular lights for the front. So you're gonna have running and turn signals, running lights and turn signals. And then the fender markers, as I was mentioning, you also have turn signals as well on the sides. For the front bumper, it does still retain the factory shackle. And we went back and forth on removing the license plate bracket for the front. This unit is going to be quite impressive to drive. So the driving experience, which we'll show you later, but after we installed the larger tires and did the maintenance that we were hoping to have success with, even at 62 miles an hour on these larger tires, it drives very straight. It is truly able to be something that you can get in traffic, move through different stoplights, and it feels good to drive, which is honestly something that with an off-road vehicle like this, I think here in the US is going to be a ton of fun for you. So let's take a look now. We'll move in towards the interior, and a little bit later we'll do the engine bay. With Santana, they used pretty much whatever they had access to. So that if you look at them in different models, they all had different dashes. So this dash configuration was actually a unique learning experience for me. The switches have a measurement that was extremely unique, and I couldn't find replacement switches. So I did end up just trying to clean up and reuse the original switches that came with the vehicle. So you're going to notice that there's some openings on the dashboard where things look like they're missing. In this scenario, though, they were aftermarket components that someone had added, and they weren't adding value to the vehicle, or they weren't working, so I did remove those. And I left those openings for now rather than trying to source other parts or cover those things up, because you may use those things in the future, and if you don't, well, thankfully there are some awesome support systems for the Land Rover and Santana world out there where you can get those parts to replace it. There is 5 functioning switches here on the dash, and then a turn signal assembly that we utilized because the factory turn signal stock actually had just aged too much. I couldn't save it either. So you're going to have headlight controls and running light controls on the original three position rocker switch. You will have blinkers, which only function with the key on, which is fantastic. And that's going to be a left and a right hand pull right here, and 2 LED indicators to match the LED lighting around the truck. We are going to have the horn functionality here. And we're going to utilize, we do have a dome fan, right, which has its wiring right here on the dash. And then as you move towards the rear, we also have a factory style dome light, which is wired to the dash as well. Finally, the windshield wipers do work, which is fantastic. They're also going to be on that keyed switch. We'll show you those things a little bit later when we're driving the truck. The nice thing here is we were able to get all these things working to match the accessories of the vehicle. The wiring harness itself was just too far gone. It had been modified over the years, maybe for track or off-road, middle of nowhere repairs, and it just wasn't gonna be salvageable. So I removed that original factory wiring harness. And we ordered a Speedway Garage harness with a little over 20 circuits, which is a lot for a truck like this. But I wanted to make sure that whoever was going to be playing with the truck next had access to a lot of circuits and a lot of expandability, given that this truck could really be a very fun adventure vehicle for someone. And you could never expand on any of those things, but it does have so many additional circuits as well. And we've seen a lot of people do a lot of cool things like the motor swaps and the resto mods to accessories in the cabins. This truck is going to be a 4-speed. You're going to have reverse all the way to the left. The 4-wheel drive system works incredible. We're going to show you later on a little bit about the shifting of this vehicle, just because that transmission has been used. And so you need to drive it like it has been used, which is going to be a lot of fun for the next person to learn. The clutch pedal feels great. The engagement is awesome in that sense. They have these aftermarket pedal covers, which ironically is the same pedal cover set that I have in one of my old project trucks as well. So it's quite the surprise when I opened the door for the first time and got to see that. The steering wheel is not factory. It is the right size though for leg and knee clearance, being able to see everything behind the dash, and also to give you a nice amount of leverage when it comes to the steering on this truck. Now, this truck does have power steering, which is fantastic. It works great. The horn, as I showed, has already been rewired to a switch. This dash horn, unfortunately, just is not functioning at this time. So, the gauges. We have temperature, fuel. We're going to have speedometer. We're going to have a couple of warning indicators and lights. The really special thing here is I was able to get almost all of those things working. So you're going to have a high and low beam indicator, which is fantastic. You are going to have lighting behind the dash, which is fantastic. The fuel level sender, as we discussed earlier, is going to be someone's project to figure out why it's not sending accurate information. But the coolant temperature sensor does send factual information to the dash, which is incredible. And even in this hot early summer Florida weather, we are seeing very low temps with this truck. It cools very efficiently. Pretty great. What I'd like to do now is kind of show you the wiring harness and a little bit of how that was laid in here. So we'll go to the other side of the vehicle and start from there. So the Speedwork harness was pretty nice to work with, I gotta tell you. And it's very entry-level friendly for someone who might look at this kit that we installed and want to learn from scratch with it. So we'll be including the documents that came with the harness originally as well, which has some handwritten notes on it of things that maybe weren't compatible with this truck or things that you wouldn't use in general, so you could save that circuit for something else later on. The biggest goal with this, just like the factory wiring harness, was to keep the harness and the fuse panel as high up in the truck as possible. Now, that 22 circuit harness did result in a large fuse block, but I wanted to make sure that you still had the space that you could add that radio back into the truck later on if you chose to. And if you decided to run this unit in some water conditions, all the wiring was going to be up and out of the water line. So we utilized this perfect space just in between the two vent openings to install that fuse panel, and the wires do run along the OEM channel as they would have originally, which is fantastic. I think it gives you a great opportunity to see what you're working with. It's very accessible. This lower assembly tray does come off with just a few screws, so when you decide to add or remove accessories, it's very accessible. It's very easy to work with. The really nice thing with their kit was every single wire was pre-labeled. This allowed me the ability to run existing wires to different places on the chassis. Know that if you're installing something later on as a novice, you have the accessibility to just look at the wire and see what it's run to. The gauge cluster is easily removable. Unfortunately, it just doesn't sit correctly in its bezel. That's due to warpage and maybe something that's been changed over the years that unfortunately I just don't have access to that information. So it is set in here in a way that it stays in place. It looks very nice. You can read and access everything right in front of you, which was really important to me. The key positions, this is a very old school key switch. I don't believe it's an original one, but it does have 3 positions. Accessory to the back, upright is off, forward and start are to the normal positions. So we want to make sure that the next owner knows that where to turn the key so that it shut off all the way. I'll make sure to spend time with you over the phone or FaceTime to make sure you're confident and comfortable with the rest of the truck, as simple as that sounds during that experience. The truck's wiring harness kit did come with a traditional option for how I could wire up the high and low beam. I did opt for the standard floor switch just because trying to simplify everything for the high and low beams once we removed that factory stock. This is just nice and accessible, and there's a lot of space down here in the footwell, so it's a very easy solution for you to switch between those two things. But it's fantastic, and when you do that, your indicator light does come on. So with the wiring harness being where it is, the nice thing is you still get the large ports for the air to flow through, and we were talking about those vents earlier. The vents being unfrozen and functioning exactly as they're supposed to is fantastic, and the levers are both reachable. Now, there was an air conditioning, quote air conditioning, right? It's just a large airflow box that was installed here. That box will be included with the purchase. It had aged in a way that I want it to go with the vehicle, but I don't necessarily trust the condition that it's in. It's very easily reinstalled, and with the circuit harness system being right here, wiring it in would not be a problem, but I'd rather you decide that on your own. The vent access tubes have been reinstalled, and that size hose is available if you wanted to plumb it back together. You'll see these brackets are here, so that's what those brackets are for. I left them installed in case you wanted to add that unit back in. So we'll go ahead, we'll move to the back of the truck because there's some great accessories back there as well. Now the back seat is capable of being folded down. This does give you a little bit more space. Now the seat functionally does fold upright. However, the spacing with the cover for the fuel fill neck does interfere with the seat, which leads me to believe that maybe this was from a different model or a different box design. And showcase the 2 main features back here. One is going to be these cargo boxes. These are removable, which is pretty awesome, and the reason that's going to be beneficial to you is because the wiring harnesses that run for the rear lighting and the rear accessories of the vehicle are hidden behind it, and it just makes it very easy to customize, make changes, update, or add additional accessories in the future. We're also going to have both of our rear seats here. I do have one folded up for you currently, and the other is going to be in that down position. They have a nice simple strap system that does secure them into place. Very functional, but you know, mostly keeping them out of the way when you don't need them, which is going to be fantastic. One of the things we do want to point out, because we want to always be transparent, this is not a perfect truck. It does have some rust, and so in certain places you'll see, like here along the door, we do have some exposed rust that's started to show through. We will make sure that there's an incredible amount of photographs showing those details, but there will be some coating applied to some of those places to stop that for the next owner in case it's not a priority to you at the start of your ownership. We just wanted to make that apparent before coating them ourselves, so that way you're aware. Now the best part has been saved for last. We're going to move up to the engine bay just so I can show you some basic maintenance that was done in preparation for you. So our 1986 Santana has the traditional front latch for the hood, the traditional lock to keep it upright. We did a few things here to prepare it for the next ownership. One of those things is we had the radiator serviced and recoated, and it cools incredibly. I mean, we live in one of the hottest states in the US, and even on sitting in idle for 30 minutes, you run a very low temp, which is incredible. It flows great water, and I verified all that with a temp gun as well at the front and the back of the block, making sure we have consistent temperatures across. I maintained that theme as we went through the engine bay and sorted out some of the electronics and then the various accessories. So I wanted to make sure that I can give you the best starting point. So the power steering pump is topped off. It has a little bit of a leak to it, but it's not just dripping and making a mess wherever it is, right? So, and it works very well. Even with these larger tires, you don't have an issue going lock to lock, at dead stop, not moving. The alternator and the power steering brackets, I don't believe are original. They were modified a little bit to fit this alternator that was installed at one point. So I have replaced some of the hardware there to get it as close to original as possible and give you all the adjustability that you're going to need during your ownership. You'll see that as you start to inspect some of the hardware that was used based on what was available locally, trying to keep that kind of in that theme of self-serviceability. The alternator clearance is very specific. You'll learn that as you maybe work with your technician that maintains your vehicles the same way that we did to find the right belts for this motor. I don't believe those are original, so those part numbers will be very important, and I have noted them in the included notes that'll come with the truck. The carburetor is a Weber design, and I was able to source a couple of new throttle springs to give you a better throttle placement and a more comfortable feel with your foot, which is awesome, and being able to get that full close out of the throttle again. We do have a choke that is set up with the truck. Now, we don't really need the choke here in Florida. It never really gets so cold, but it is very heavy to use that slide. So do expect that you could improve that later, but it does function and it does do what it's supposed to. The brakes do work the way that we believe is safe for you to drive the truck. You can always get more out of a brake pedal feel, but we wanted you to be able to jump in it, enjoy it. Just that it is an all-drum system, so it was important to make note that there's a very unique pedal feel to this. This uses a Ford starter solenoid, so all the accessories are wired to that solenoid, making it very easy to see how it's put together. And that's following the same instructions that were provided during the wiring harness kit, so the Speedworks provided us. So it should be a very plug-and-play experience for you. Now, at the moment, it's going to be shipped to you with the oil bath air filter. That's such a cool piece of history to have with this truck. What won't be included, unfortunately, is going to be the parts that are necessary to finalize your connection to the snorkel. So those are parts that you can source through the community. The snorkel is in place, the path is available for it. The only tools and equipment that we have access to in this scenario are going to be for that oil drum. The cross pipe here does function accordingly. It is starting to show some age, so it might be something worth replacing in the future as you look for those parts. The battery holds a charge even with the terminals still connected. I don't have any parasitic drain on this unit, which is fantastic. It's honestly a big goal that I had to make sure that wired correctly, you had no issues on an older truck like this, because usually those 80s trucks, they have so many different little electronic touch points where your battery runs down, and we just don't have that issue with this truck, which is fantastic. So the distributor and the coil pack have both been updated to a non-resistor type, which means you don't need to use the OEM recommended resistors that would go in line and parallel to those older distributor styles. However, I've left that resistor in place on the firewall, so if you decide to return this truck to full OEM, you have a part and a part number to work from, given the Santanas are so specific. Also on the firewall, we have the large electronic component that would have managed that original wiring harness. Again, I've left it attached to the firewall with nothing connected to it, so you have access to that part in the future, and it doesn't interfere with anything. You could remove it very easily. Otherwise, the engine bay is very simple. We've run new fuel line from the tank up to the carburetor, as well as the vent line has been replaced. We do have great condition for the coolant lines, and the temperatures, as I was mentioning, across that radiator and from front to back on the block, including at the different exhaust points, are just all uniform. Everything runs as you could possibly hope for it to be. I believe, though, that it's time for us to take the test drive. I think it's time to show you what it's like driving this 1986 Land Rover Santana that survived the jungles of Colombia for so many years. So why don't we take a drive? So now we're going to take it for a drive, but I think a great thing to do, because we know you're going to ask, is, well, does the low transfer case work? And, you know, is it going to go and do all the things that a Land Rover is supposed to do? And I think it's so important to show you that even this gas engine at idle, I know this is not, you know, your typical hill that I'm sure you're going to use it for, but I mean, how cool is that to walk next to your truck in this environment? I just think that's so unique. So now I think we put it into high gear and we go take a little adventure around town just to show you how she really drives. And of course, with a body style like this and being this old, we're gonna have rattles and shakes and shimmies, and it's definitely part of the character of being interested in older vehicles like this. Now, the first to second gear transition is typically pretty seamless. What I will say, though, is that second to third and third to fourth transition is extremely agricultural, would be the word I like to use. You have to either give the motor and the transmission synchros time to come back together. You can double clutch it the way that I'm going to drive it today. The biggest thing here is just understanding it's an older truck that really did spend its life as a workhorse in the jungle. I mean, what more could you possibly ask to be around all these years later after living a life that way? I'll use my left-hand turn signal here, which does work, which is fantastic. So there's my third into third gear. It'll take you some time to find that smooth transition between the two. And up to fourth. You'll notice I'm double clutching just enough to get it comfortable with itself. You can definitely hear that older speedometer cable with just a little bit of that classic chattering that comes along with those older designs. Now, at the moment, the exhaust is, well, it's old. And so it does have a small exhaust leak that as you're coming down from those downshifts, you get this very bubbly, poppy, gurgling noise from the exhaust, which sounds cool to some, and I know to others isn't exactly what you're looking for. I think something that's going to be really important to the next buyer is what kind of drivability are we getting out of this vehicle. And if you look now, just pay attention to how few inputs I'm really having to give the steering wheel. We're on a left-hand bank at the moment. So there's that first to second. Third gear, I'm going to let sit. Right in, no grinding. And same thing with fourth. Shifts great, it really does. If you try to rush from gear to gear, you're going to get a grind in third. The synchros in fourth aren't having it at all. But you give it that time to breathe, and it definitely lets you go from gear to gear. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to let us show you some things that are very important for the next owner to know about this truck. I really hope we can find a great home for it. I know our great client would appreciate knowing that it's in a great set of hands next. So we hope that everyone involved is super excited about the project and gets to see this thing find a great opportunity for a next life. So thank you, and we will see you during the auction. Take care. Bye-bye.